I never thought at 52 I'd feel so betrayed. Yet here I am, telling you this, because I need someone to hear me. My name is Henry Blake. I live in Fort Collins, Colorado. I've worked as an HVAC technician for over 30 years. My wife's name is Elaine. We've been married since we were 25. We raised 2 kids together. Our daughter Kate is married and lives in Utah. Our son Michael is in Denver, starting his career. Everything changed last autumn. That's when the first signs slipped through. It started small. I noticed Elaine stayed later at the community center. She told me she volunteered with an art class she helped organize. I believed her. She'd always had creative hobbies, painting, pottery, sketching. She said she needed more time to herself. I thought nothing of it. 50 years of marriage, you assume trust comes easy. Then came the blurred text notifications. At first, I chalked it up, friends, community contacts, people in her art circle. But one evening, I glanced down at her phone when she set it beside her on the bed. The message preview read, "I miss you already, can't wait for Tuesday." No name. No sender. My heart skipped. I didn't say anything then. I swallowed the suspicion, trying to rationalize it, and maybe someone she knows from the art class, someone older, someone harmless. But at night, when she was asleep, I sat awake staring at the ceiling, replaying that message in my mind. I felt a cold weight in my chest. A week later, I drove home early. My schedule had cleared up. I left the truck in the driveway, keys in hand, and I walked up to the front door. Inside, I heard soft laughter, and the unmistakable crack of wine glass against wood. My throat tightened. I crept forward through the living room. The front door to their home studio was half open. There, I saw her. And another man. Not a stranger, but someone from her art group, named Lucas. They stood very close. She was laughing at something he said, and he had his hand on the small of her back. She didn't hear me. My mind froze. My body wouldn't move. For what felt like long minutes, I just watched. They weren't doing anything beyond closeness. But closeness is betrayal when you're married so long. She pressed her head to his shoulder. He leaned in, whispered something. I backed away. I left without a word. I spent the rest of the evening in my truck, engine off, tears coming unbidden. I hated myself for crying. Over the next days, I became a detective in my own life. I watched her schedule. I checked her social media, nothing obvious. I asked her casually, "How's the art class going?" She would smile and say, "Wonderful, love. The people are so talented." I heard laughter in her voice, something she hadn't sounded like in years between us. One late Sunday, I followed her. I got into my car just before she left. She drove north, along winding roads out of town, toward a small lodge hidden in the pine shadows. My heart pounded as I parked a distance away. I watched through the windshield as she entered alone. An hour passed. Then Lucas pulled up, red sedan, dusty from the road. He stepped out, looked around, walked into the lodge. They disappeared behind the blinds. I wanted to confront them then. But I didn't. I sat there, powerless, watching. I'd collected little clues, a receipt for dinner at a restaurant in the next county, her lipstick on a glass, slight cologne traces not hers. None of it enough to storm in. I didn't want her to claim I'd gone crazy. I wanted proof, clean, undeniable proof, before I acted. Sleep became a stranger. I lay wide awake, replaying years in my head, remembering how we used to laugh late at night, hold hands at the table. I'd open my eyes and she'd be gone, sleeping in the other room, I'd tell myself. But it was more than that now. It was a question, how long had this been going on? That morning, she came back home. She wore a long coat, scarf, hair brushed differently. I met her at the door, standing in the foyer, arms crossed though my heart shook. She kissed me. I looked over her shoulder, at the shadows in the hallway. I didn't say, "Where have you been?" I just said, "Dinner in an hour." My voice flat. She nodded, walked away. I turned to the mirror. My reflection looked hollow. My eyes too old. Secretly, I hoped she'd slam out of the house with fury. But she didn't. That afternoon, I made a decision. I would record everything carefully. I bought a discreet voice recorder. I took out her old laptop under the pretext of cleaning it and made backups of conversations, hidden folders. I kept receipts, looked through credit card statements. I tracked her gifts and payday withdrawals I didn't know were going anywhere. I catalogued times she said she was with friends but ended later than expected. I marked every late night, every strange trip. I also started writing letters. To myself. I recorded what I felt. The heartbreak. The anger. The humiliation. The longing that's now twisted. I read those letters aloud in the garage, my voice catching, but it helped me anchor, to keep from floating off into despair. One evening, she asked me to come to her art show, one of her gallery nights downtown. She said Lucas would be there. The first moment I felt something in my gut twist. I responded, "I'll come." I decided, I will confront, not now, but there, where other people will see. I would ask questions in public. I would not be silent. That night, I dressed carefully, a dark slacks, crisp shirt, jacket. I drove downtown and parked a block away. I walked in quietly. The gallery was dimly lit, soft jazz in the background, people clustered around her paintings, admiring shapes, colors, lights. She saw me, froze for a moment. I nodded. She walked over, expression polite, brief. I smiled, but my heart boiled. Lucas stood nearby. Tall, dark hair, confident posture. He greeted me with a handshake. I shook it. I said something banal, "Your work looks great tonight." He nodded, "Too cool." I felt the crowd's eyes flick between us, whispers. Elaine gave me a glass of wine, her hand grazing mine. I let it sit there, warmth from the glass, but I didn't drink. She asked, "Are you okay?" I replied, "Fine." The words tasted like ash. Later, in front of others, I asked, "Lucas, how long have you and Elaine known each other?" A murmur ran through the room. He looked surprised. She's face drained of color. He stammered, "Oh, months." I said, loud enough for those around us, "Months? That's a long time for friends in art class." There was a hush. The gallery quieted. She said nothing. Her eyes flicked to me, then to the floor. That moment, I felt I was no longer the man she could just walk past without guilt. Something inside me shifted. Some part of that man she once married was reclaiming space. I ended part one with that confrontation in public. I know now that the real battle is ahead, the unraveling, the truth, the plan I'll have to carry out, and her reaction. If you want, I can send you part two next, where I dig deeper, find her secrets, and begin the turning of the tables. Do you want me to continue now? I saw her face go pale in the gallery. The hush was louder than the soft jazz. I felt every pair of eyes turn toward us. I held Lucas's gaze. My heart pounded. I had staked a claim, quiet, controlled. I would not back down. He cleared his throat. Elaine, we met through a collaborative project. Art show prep. I never intended to, he trailed off under the weight of stares. I let him struggle. I gave Elaine a moment to respond. She looked at me, her eyes wavering. Part of me expected tears, or guilt. Instead, she swallowed, nodded, and whispered, "I'll talk to you later." Then she stepped away into a crowd of guests, leaving me standing there, clutching that wine glass I never touched. That night, I got home late. I paced the kitchen's narrow hallway, cold tile under my feet. The walls, the photos, the places we had been, everything felt like a cage now. I touched the counter, looked out the window. The moonlight slanted in, faint. It seemed pale, distant, like hope in my marriage. Elaine arrived hours later. Her key turned in the door softly. I didn't meet her at the door. I waited in the living room, silent, tense. When she walked past, I looked up. She said, "I'm sorry. I never meant to humiliate you." I said nothing at first. I watched her. She hesitated. Then, in a quivering voice, "Can we talk?" I nodded. She motioned toward the dining table. I poured 2 glasses of water. I didn't want wine now. We sat across from each other. Silence hung. Finally, she said, "Henry, I got lost. I felt invisible. Last year, after Kate moved, after Michael went off, I felt like I didn't matter. I started talking with Lucas about art and ideas, and then, her voice cracked. We fell into something. I listened, but coldly. I took notes mentally. "How long?" I asked, quietly. She closed her eyes. "Almost 8 months. My breath left me. The shock was sharp. 8 months. That was the months Lucas used. It all now slid into place. I asked, "Was it physical from the start?" She avoided my eyes. "No, emotional first. Letters. Messages. Then we crossed a line. I felt bile rise. But I refused to show it. I stretched my face into calm. Who knew?" I asked. "No one. I didn't tell a soul." She nodded. I was ashamed. Afraid. She placed her hand over mine. Her fingers trembled. I pulled mine away. "Don't." My voice was flat. In that moment I decided my course. I would not be her victim. I would not collapse into begging. I needed a plan. Over the next week, I dug harder. I examined bank statements. I followed the thread of bills and credit card charges. There was a pattern: dinners in nearby towns, hotel bookings on weekends, fuel expenses on remote roads. I cross-referenced her art class schedule, her volunteer days, and found clear mismatches. I confronted her one evening when she said she was meeting friends. I said, "I want the truth." She broke. She cried. She said she never wanted to hurt me, that she was lonely, that the passion died. But I looked past tears. I needed evidence. I hired a private investigator discreetly. Not someone to break in or spy illegally, but someone to follow, record, document. I told him only that I suspected wrongdoing, and gave him those mismatched charges, the lodge detail, the name Lucas, the drive she took. I marked the places she visited. I gave him pictures, times. Meanwhile, I prepared my emotional armor. I talked to a counselor under the pretext of stress from work. I rehearsed every confrontation, every lie she might tell, every excuse. I practiced speaking calm, firm, cutting, without begging. She sensed the change in me. The night she realized I wasn't breaking, she tried to reach out. She would lean in, say, "Let's have a conversation," but I turned away. She complained, "Are you distancing?" I said, "I have been betrayed." She recoiled. Her eyes sharpened. I started documenting conversations with her, with permission slip in my own domain. She'd call from her art class, "I'll be late." I'd reply, recording her tone, her hesitation. I kept little logs in my notebook. October 8, 7:12 p.m., she claimed she was at gallery meeting, but location per GPS was 20 miles out. These logs would become ammunition. One Saturday morning, I received a call from the PI. He was at the lodge. He had photos. They showed Elaine arriving. Later, Lucas's car pulling up. Him entering the lodge. Their hands brushing. Him leaving late at night. I asked for all the timestamps. The photos were clean, shaking with clarity. I felt two things, a sorrow and fierce resolve. That afternoon, I printed them, in silence, in my little home office. I hung them in a folder, labeled Truth. I stared at them and let the rage pull. I whispered to myself, "You will answer." That night, I waited. Elaine came home. Dusk had long passed. She walked into the house, looked at me. I held out the folder. "I know, Elaine. I have proof." My voice was steady. She gasped. Her eyes widened. Her mouth opened. "Henry, don't you dare," she started. I held up a finger. "Let me finish." I slid the photos across the dining table, one by one. She stared. I watched her face crumple, forehead wrinkle, her composure fracture. I read her like a map, guilt, shame, desperation. I said, "You told me 8 months. You said emotional first. These show otherwise." I placed side by side a photo where she leans toward him in the lodge lounge, and another where Lucas's hand hovers near her back. "You lied. You lied to me for months." She tried to speak. I stopped her. "Not now." I continued, fiercest calm, "You have to decide now how this ends. Do you fight for us? Do you stop? Or do you walk away knowing how badly you betrayed me?" She burst into tears. I felt the old reflex, to comfort her, rise up. But I held back. I couldn't afford weakness. She cried, "I'm sorry. I love you. I never meant." I stood. I gathered the photos, slipping them back into the folder. I walked past her. "Sleep in the guest room tonight," I said. And I went to the bedroom, slept in the bed we once shared, alone. I didn't sleep well. I thought of everything, our early days, the promises, how we drifted, how I failed to notice her fading. I thought of revenge, of whether to forgive, of whether to expose more. But mainly, I thought, I won't let her silence me or gaslight me. I will reclaim dignity. Morning came. She knocked. "Henry," she said softly. I opened the door. She looked disheveled, pale. I said, "Wait in the kitchen." She did. I stayed in the living room. After a moment, I joined her, poured 2 cups of coffee. I sat across. She stared, hands trembling. I said, "We need to talk solutions." She leaped in, "I will stop everything. I'll quit art class, cut ties with Lucas, do school work, whatever you ask. I'll be faithful. I'll prove myself." I held up a hand. I said, "A proof. Words don't repair this. You need to prove. No contact. No lying. Full access to your phone, your email, all your whereabouts. You agree?" She nodded. "Yes." I went further, "We'll see a counselor. You will open up. I will set boundaries. You will rebuild trust. And you will answer questions honestly. No hiding." She nodded again, eyes red. "I understand." Inside, I was still burning. But I controlled it. I would use that fire as fuel, not let it destroy me. Over the next weeks, the shift was palpable. I observed her phone usage. I got alerts. I checked logs. I asked simple questions. Where are you? With who? She replied. Hesitation? I asked more. She answered. Slowly. Cautiously. Our dinners were cold. We sat across from each other. But every so often, I caught her glance down, shame in her eyes. I also talked with a few friends subtly, learned what's normal in betrayal recovery, how to rebuild power when trust is broken. I kept my wounds private. I didn't gossip. I didn't cry publicly. I built strength. At work, I was distracted. The truck rides, the HVAC calls, it all felt smaller now. Yet in the noise and hum of machinery, I found solace. I'd slip into the cab, breathe, remind myself, I will not be undone. One evening, I followed her again. She said she had a meeting with local artists. I trailed at a distance. She went to a cafe in a quiet town. I watched from the car. Lucas's car was not behind her. She sat with a woman. They talked, laughed softly. It looked innocent. But I still recorded. I still logged. I returned home. She came later. I asked, who was she? She said an old friend from school, someone supportive, someone she'd leaned on lately for grief over our drift. I believed part of it. But I would verify. I sat in front of her. I said, we are not healed yet. I have doubts. I see half-truths. I expect full proof or else I walk away. She nodded, tears. I know. That night I slept with one ear on the door. I thought, if she leaves me, I'll accept it. But not without exposing all. Not without dignity. And so ends part 2. The chess game has begun. She is on guard now. I am alert. The next moves, her reaction, her next lies or confessions, my plan of retribution or reclaiming, are ahead. I woke up early that morning before the sun. Dawn's pale light crept through the curtains, soft and cold. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the quiet, missing sounds we once shared, the small creak of sheets, her soft breathing beside me. Now, only silence. I walked through the hall to the kitchen. I padded across tile, flipped on a light. A cup of black coffee. No sugar. No stirring, just the deep bitterness. I stared at the dark brew and let my thoughts roll. We had an appointment with the counselor that afternoon. I told Elaine we should do it together, for clarity, for rebuilding, or ending. She agreed. Before she left for her art class meeting, we stood at the door. Her bag over her shoulder. She turned to me, lips parted, but before she could say goodbye, I held up my phone. Opening the recorder app, I said, I'm recording. For honesty. Her face shuddered. She nodded. Then she walked out. The door clicked. I watched her go from the window. My heart tightened, fear rising, even though anger had claimed center stage. I didn't trust silence between us anymore. At the counseling office, the room smelled of lavender polish and calm. We sat in armchairs, about 10 feet apart. The counselor, a woman in her 50s, introduced herself as Dr. Marisol Grant. She spoke gently, but I sensed her resolve. Henry, Elaine, thank you for coming. Today, we'll try to uncover what's beneath the betrayal. To hear truths, even when they hurt. Her voice was measured. She asked us to take turns speaking only for ourselves, no interruptions. Elaine went first. She spoke with tears, her voice soft, shaky. She told about feeling unseen, unappreciated, how over years the small tolerances grew, a little complaints ignored, quiet resentments left unsaid. her own dreams stifled. She said Lucas listened when she felt no one else did. She said she didn't mean to hurt me, but longing crept in. When it was my turn, I tried to speak calmly. I told about my shock at discovering messages, my pain in watching her closeness with Lucas, my struggle to trust her again. I told how I gathered proof, how I felt humiliated, how many nights I lay awake thinking of every memory we shared. Dr. Grant asked questions. Elaine, when did you first feel disconnected? She named moments, the day Kate left for her new life, more hospital visits, nights I worked late, simple neglects. She said she tried to reach me but I was distant, emotionally. I asked Elaine, did you ever feel you could tell me? Did you try? She shook her head, tears streaming. I tried. But you didn't listen. You were always busy, or asleep, or closed off. I realized I had let space widen into canyon. Dr. Grant guided us to listen, not respond. For 2 hours we sat, voices trembling, walls thinning. I heard things I didn't want to hear, things I wished I'd known years ago. I spoke less than I wanted. But for first time, we talked truth. After the session, we walked into the parking lot in awkward quiet. Cars glinted in the sun. I offered her my arm. She took it. We walked side by side. We didn't speak until we got home. Once inside, she said, "Thank you for coming with me." I nodded, said nothing. That evening I sat alone in the garage, the folder Truth next to me. I looked at my collection. Photos, logs, voice recordings, notes. My plan of retribution simmered at the back of my mind. But for now, I held my fire. I started drafting an outline. What I might do, steps to control the narrative, measures she must pass. I knew I had options: expose her publicly, demand answers from Lucas, break her social ties, or rebuild from inside. But I needed patience. Days passed. She adhered to the rules. No secret outings. She shared locations, phone calls. She seemed frightened of slipping. She deleted the art class she gave as excuse for distant trips. She told me more of her plans, answered carefully. I tracked her online behavior. I followed metadata, timestamps, browser logs, for any hidden folder or secret messenger. I used my tech skills to inspect devices. I saw hints: chat windows minimized too quickly, odd Wi-Fi pings at odd hours, emails she opened late at night. None were smoking guns, and none were obvious betrayals. But each was a shadow. One evening, I asked calmly, "Does Lucas know we are working on this? That there's trust to rebuild or end?" Her eyes flickered. She said, "He suspects something." But I told him to back off. I said, "Words. I have no proof of that. I will verify." She nodded again, swallowed. The tension between us was taut wire. Meanwhile, the PI delivered more photos. He followed Lucas. He took images of Lucas's home. He got snapshots of emails Lucas sent, screenshots of him at wine bars, stepping into hotel lobbies. Nothing illegal, but definitely more than friendship. We had a dossier. I sat with that dossier under soft light in my home office. I arranged the pictures carefully. I paired them with timestamps, locations, logs. I created a narrative in my head, the story I could tell. The evidence I could show. The truth I could demand. I rehearsed how I would present it, to her, to Lucas, even to friends if I had to. One night, at dinner, she looked at me over her plate of salad. Her hands shaky. I said, "Elaine, I want full disclosure tonight. No omissions. No excuses." She nodded. She said, "I will. Ask me anything." I asked, "Have you ever slept with him at his home or hotel?" Her face flushed. She nodded tearfully. My heart lurched. I asked, follow UPS, Erwin first? How many times? Which locations? She answered, voice breaking. It was years ago, the first time in a small cabin in a mountain retreat. Then hotel in Colorado Springs. Then more. She trembled, wept. She said it didn't start that way, emotional first, but crossed that line after months. I pressed, why him? Why now? Why did you stay with me while lying? She said, because of our history. Because I love you. Because I was afraid. I listened. I hated concessions. I hated how much I still cared. That night, I lay in bed, wide awake. My mind again on replay. Years of memories, rearranged. I realized that even now, I felt pity for her, because somewhere inside, she was broken too. But pity alone would not repair my dignity. Next day I made a decision, I would confront Lucas. But I wouldn't pick a public clash, I'd do it on my terms. I would call him to meet, somewhere neutral, somewhere I had control. I would be the one asking questions, exposing, forcing admissions. I texted Lucas under the guise of an artist collaborative meeting, would you like to meet Tuesday morning at Bluebird Cafe? I have some questions about the gallery show. Lucas replied, sure. 10 a.m. works. I knew that meeting would hurt. Tuesday, dawn. I arrived early. I sat at a corner table, coffee hot in hand. I watched the door. Heart thumping under my shirt. I wore a quiet suit, calm mask. I rehearsed phrases. I rehearsed control. He walked in. Tall, clean-cut, confident. He spotted me, paused. I nodded. He Saturday. I smiled, stiffly. Thank you for meeting me, Lucas. He nodded. We exchanged pleasantries, medium talk. Then I said, I know about the lodge. His face caught. I slid a photo across the table, Elaine entering. He glanced. I laid more, a location, timestamp. He didn't speak. I said, I know about the hotel stays. The cabin. The dinners. It's all here. I felt the room tighten. He shifted in his chair. Henry, he started, then cut off, his voice low. I asked, why? Why her? Why all this? He hesitated, looked away. He said, it wasn't supposed to hurt like this. I replied, that's not my problem. I pressed, did you know she was married this way? Did you promise her something she didn't get from me? Did you plan to leave her for you? His eyes flicked, then he said, I never promised anything permanent. We both made mistakes. His voice cracked. I leaned forward. But she told me differently. She told me she loves you. She said she'd leave me for you. He swallowed. His expression flickered, fear? Regret? Shame? I ended it sharply. Stay away from her. No more calls. No more contact. If you try to reach her, or she reaches you, I'll take further steps. You understand? He nodded. He looked small now. I felt a surge of victory, not because I hated him, but because I reclaimed power. I stood, placed money for my coffee, and left. I drove away, heart pounding, sweat at my temples. Coming home, I felt adrenaline and emptiness. I realized the raw wound was still open. But another shift had happened. I had confronted a corner of this betrayal. I had asserted dominance in a piece of it. But the war was not over. That night, Elaine and I sat at dinner in quiet tension. She said, "You met Lucas?" I nodded. She flinched. I said, I told him, stop. No contact. He agreed. But this is not about him only. It's about us. She stared. She swallowed. She chewed slowly, tears glinting. I said, I don't know if we rebuild or if we divide. But you've got to earn back trust. No more shadows. No more secrets. She nodded. I understand. I watched her eyes. They held fear, but also hope. That night she fell asleep early. I lay awake, listening. The house felt different. Heavy. Quiet. Hallowed. The next morning, light crept in, pale and indifferent. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling hollow and fierce in one breath. I thought about where we were, how we got here. And what I still needed to do. I rose, dressed carefully in jeans and a button-down shirt, and made coffee in the kitchen. The house was quiet, still reeling. I poured 2 mugs, for me and for her, then carried them into the living room. She was already in the armchair, staring out the window. Her hair was loose, shoulders slumped. I sat beside her. I handed her 1 mug. She took it, hands trembling. I didn't ask anything. I just watched her. A long moment passed before she whispered, I'm scared. Her voice cracked. I said, me too. But fear doesn't excuse betrayal. It just shows how much we have to decide. She nodded, staring at her mug. I asked quietly, do you regret crossing that line? She looked up. Her eyes reddened. Every day, she said. From the moment it happened, regret felt like a weight I couldn't carry. She paused, swallowed. I'm sorry I destroyed things I didn't even know were so fragile. That day I resolved, I would begin to salvage or finish with integrity. No rash moves. I'd shape the narrative. I'd control the release of truth. I'd decide when others knew, when friends, family, community, if it came to that. For the next week I acted normally. I went to work, handled calls, climbed ladders, fixed HVAC systems. But inside I carried the weight of a war. In my breaks, I sat in the truck, staring out the windshield, breathing deep. I reviewed the dossier. I reviewed our conversations. I rehearsed what I might say, to friends, to her, to Lucas if necessary. Elaine followed the rules so far. But I sensed her internal struggle. One evening she offered to cook dinner. She made steak, vegetables. I watched her carefully. She placed the plates before me, hands shaking. I told her, thank you. She sat opposite me. Silence filled the space. Finally she said, I know how much I hurt you. I nodded. I know you will watch me for a long time. And I will accept that. She looked pained. I hope one day you can see me as someone you chose, not someone you settled for. My stomach twisted. I said nothing. I didn't know if we would reach that point. That night, after she fell asleep, I packed the folder truth into a briefcase. I was thinking, what if I have to show this to family, friends, the art circle? What if she denies further? I needed a final move, a moment to tip scales. I drafted a letter in my mind. I might distribute it. Or send her something. Or host a revelation evening where she would face evidence in front of others. But I held these thoughts, waiting for the moment. One evening, I received a message on social media. A mutual friend, Sandra, someone in Elaine's art circle, had commented under one of Elaine's paintings, a beautiful work. You have such energy. But then another comment, I saw you with a stranger at the lodge the other night. Small town, people talk. My heart hammered. Someone else knew, or suspected. I screenshot that, filed it. I reached out to Sandra privately. I asked casually, "Saw your comment." "What lodge?" She hesitated, then said, "Oh, just chatter." I overheard something. I didn't see much. I thanked her. Inside, I felt both relief and dread, as the circle was tightening. Secrets leak. I realized I had to decide, go public, or control the flow. I wrote an email to a few close friends, men I trusted, with a careful, brief note, as something is wrong in my marriage. I may need help or witnesses later. Just be ready. I didn't send it yet. It sat in drafts. It weighed heavy every time I opened it. Days blurred. We passed each other in rooms. We sat in the same house. We spoke few words. She grew quieter. I grew colder. I battled my own emotions, still tenderness for her, love that felt like ashes, anger, betrayal, cautious hope. Then came the spark. One afternoon, as I was leaving work, I saw Lucas's red sedan parked near our neighborhood coffee shop. I slowed. I saw Lucas and Elaine sitting side by side inside, talking over cups. My chest constricted. He placed his hand on her knee. She didn't pull away. I drove past without stopping, stomach clenched. I called the PI. I said, "Go there now. Get photos. Video." He replied, "On it." My hands shook as I drove home. That night over dinner, I asked Elaine, casually, "Any meetings this afternoon?" She blinked, paused. "Just with some old friend," she said. I said nothing more. I watched her. Later, after she went to her studio, I checked social media. No check-ins. No mention. No friend posts. I dug in further that night, browser history, metadata, timestamps. I found nothing conclusive yet. The PI called after midnight. He gave me 2 images. Elaine stepping into the cafe. Lucas following minutes later. A snapshot of her hand on his knee. A partial video, blurred but clear enough to see their proximity. I exhaled, felt cold. The war returned in stark clarity. I laid out the new photos next to the old ones. I compared cameras, angles, shadows. I knew now, if she wasn't just meeting to talk. The affair was alive again. I felt fury. I felt a fierce sadness. But I also felt power. I held proof. The next night, I confronted her. We sat at the table. The folder open. She looked at me, waiting. I placed the photos before her. She gasped, tears forming. I said, "Why tonight? After everything, why this?" She stared, awash. I couldn't help it. He reached out. I gave in. Her voice trembled. I shook my head. Not good enough. I pressed, "Were you together in that cafe?" She hesitated, then said, "Yes." I asked, "Did you think you could keep it secret?" She flinched. I thought it would be the last time. I replied coldly, "Well, you're wrong. Because you were seen. And photographed. And I will show this to whoever you choose to deny before." Her head dropped. I slid the email I had drafted across the table. She looked up. "I was going to send this to friends, community, unless you told me the truth." Her eyes filled. She said nothing. I said, "You have until noon tomorrow to give me a full confession, a timeline, places, names. Or I'll send it." Tears ran down her cheeks. She nodded. That night I lay awake, my mind churning. The next morning at breakfast, she handed me a handwritten confession, dated, times, places, names, details, admissions. She listed late nights, hotel rooms, the cabin, wine bars, art retreats, secret calls. It was complete. It hurt. It laid bare everything. But essential. I read it slowly. My fingers trembled. I finished. I looked at her. She was quiet, head bowed. I asked, "Is that everything?" She nodded. I asked, "Did he ever promise to leave you?" She said, "And not always. Many times he withdrew." I asked, "Do you want me to send that email?" She looked terrified. I said, "No. Not yet. But you have to prove to me there will be no more. No meetings. No contact. And you have to rebuild trust from the rubble." She whispered, "I will." I nodded. I said, "We'll try." But inside I knew the next moves would test everything. Over the next days, I watched. I scrutinized. I set small tests, as she allowed me access to devices. She shared schedules. She called without prompting. But when she walked out of the house, I felt tension rise. I timed things. I followed again discreetly. I made her aware I could. I made boundaries visible. Meanwhile, I prepared just in case. I typed that email, polished it. I prepared statements I might use in a confrontation, or public reveal. I lined up a few confidants who might be witnesses or allies. I prepared emotional endgames, and what I would do if she fell again, what I would refuse. I resolved, I would not capitulate. I would not beg. I would act with strength, even if I felt broken. One evening, in a rare moment, she came to me, tears in her eyes, hands trembling, and said, "I'm sorry. I can't change the past. But I want us back, if you let me." I held her hand. I felt the old ache. I said, softly, "I need you to earn me back, step by step." "I'm not there yet." She nodded, pressing her lips to my hand. My heart cracked. That night, I lay awake again, listening to her breathing in the other room. I wondered, could I trust her again? Would the wounds always remain? Could I ever forgive? But I also knew this, and no matter what, I would not be silent. I would not be powerless. I would steer this story now. The morning after her confession, I walked into the living room before dawn. The house smelled of stale coffee and regret. She was curled on the couch, blanket half on her, half off, eyes closed. I sat across from her, silent. My thoughts weighed heavy. Yesterday's revelation changed everything, but it didn't fix anything. I cleared my throat softly. "We need rules," I said. My voice steadied itself. She stirred, opened eyes, looked up. No secret outings. No private meetings. No lying. Full accountability. You share everything. I will ask. You answer. Always. Her lips quivered. She nodded, voice soft, a yes. I will. That day, I told 2 trusted friends. I showed them the confession letter, only parts. I told them I needed witnesses who knew the truth, in case it spilled. Their faces were solemn. One friend, Paul, said, Henry, you doing right. But be careful. The other, David, nodded and said he'd stand by me. I didn't tell her I'd done that. Some truths needed to be shielded, for now. Over the next days, I tested her. I asked where she was, she answered truthfully. I asked who she met, she told. She gave me access to her email, her phone. She said the art community meetings were paused, and she skipped a trip she earlier said she must attend. She began to isolate Lucas, telling him to stop contacting her. She cried often, fearful that she'd slip or break a rule. I held back judgment, watching, waiting. Then came the social pressure. Elaine's art circle started whispering. At a gallery event, someone let a comment slip, and we heard about some rumors. Others stared. Paintings drew eyes, but also glances at her, at me. Some old friends came by to express concern. I greeted them with a hollow smile. Elaine looked smaller beside me. One evening, an email arrived to both of us from one of the group, and we'd like to hold a meeting, just to talk. Some concerns have been voiced. I recognized the tone, our confrontation. I read it to her. She looked shocked. I said, "I'll attend with you." She nodded, relief mixed with dread. At that meeting, held in the gallery's back room, around 10 people sat at a long table, artists, friends, some patrons. The air was cool, fluorescent, tense. The organizer, a lady named Marjorie, opened, and we love Elaine's work. We value her. But rumors are hurting the group. Some expect clarity. Some feel betrayed. Her eyes flicked to Elaine, then to me. I sat, silent. Elaine trembled. People exchanged looks. One man said, "We want to give space, art is emotional." But some of us heard she was meeting Lucas at lodges, hotels. That's hard to swallow. There was murmuring. Elaine's face drained. She looked at me. I raised my hand. The room quieted. I said, "I'm going to say something. I'm not here for scandal. I'm here for truth. I love Elaine. But she betrayed me. I have proof. She confessed. I'm holding her accountable. I ask that this group respect our privacy. But also understand, this has affected more than just us." The room held its breath. Some nodded. Some shifted uncomfortably. Marjorie exhaled. "Thank you for your honesty." Others stayed silent. The meeting ended. We left. Outside, Elaine leaned into me. Tears streaked down her cheeks. I held her. I could feel her weight, shame, sorrow, fear. But I also felt relief, as some of the lies were out. That night, in the car, I drove us home. We said nothing until we pulled in. She turned to me. "Thank you for defending me." I said nothing. I just locked the doors, led her inside. Life became a gauntlet. Every day, I tested trust. Every day, she answered. Some days well. Some days poorly. She flinched when her phone buzzed at odd hours. She answered quickly when I asked where she was. She started journaling again, writing to me today's truth. She invited me into her art process, asked me questions. But I held back. I watched. One afternoon, I followed her again, discreetly. She went to a small town's cafe, then to a scenic overlook. She sat with someone I didn't recognize fully. They talked long, quietly. The PI texted me later, photos taken. Unclear if involvement is romantic. I studied them. Her posture wasn't like before, but shadows played tricks. I saved them. That evening I asked, "Did you meet someone new today?" She looked surprised. She said cautiously, "An old friend, supportive. Nothing improper." I nodded. I said, "Let me see your phone." She gave it. I browsed the photos, messages. I saw names I didn't know. Navigated. Nothing overt. Nothing unrecoverable. I closed it. "Okay," I said. But inside, my heart ached. Then came the tipping point. My son Michael visited one weekend. He'd always been protective of his mother and father. He sensed tension. At dinner, after awkward silences, he asked, "Dad. Mom, what's going on?" Elaine's fork cluttered. She paled. I sighed. I said, Michael, your mother and I are dealing with something serious. I want you to know, I still love her, but truth was hidden from me. We're trying to heal, or find closure. His eyes flicked between us, pain and confusion. He nodded, said little. Later, as he stayed with a friend, he pulled me aside and asked, Are you okay, Dad? I said, I am. I will be. Michael's involvement made the stakes higher. This was no longer about just us. It touched family. That night, I lay awake thinking, if this fails, I must protect my dignity, my future. If it succeeds, maybe we find something real again. But there were no guarantees. Elaine's behavior started slipping. One evening, she was distant. Dinner cold. She avoided eye contact. Afterward, I asked, Was something today off? She shook her head. I stayed quiet. Inside, alarm bells rang. That night I reviewed the day's logs, digital traces, location pings, app use, Wi-Fi activity. I found a bit of anomaly. Her phone pinged a location outside the route she claimed. Not proof, but smoke. I kept the dossier warm. Next morning, I confronted her. I saw a ping last night. You didn't tell me. She stuttered. She said, It was nothing. A glitch. A friend gave me a ride home. I stared at her. She looked away. I said, I need truth. Always. No excuses. She didn't respond. The next evening, she announced she would attend an art retreat weekend. My heart tightened. I asked, Where? She said a remote cabin in the mountains, with 10 people. I said, I want full schedule, names, times, contact. She hesitated, then nodded. Yes. I felt relief, but also dread. A few days before the retreat, I got an email from the head of the retreat, excerpt, Elaine, we're excited to host you, but please arrive Friday evening, first session Saturday at sunrise. In the attachments were maps, schedules, names. I forwarded all to my PI with instructions, follow, photograph, document. The day she left, I watched the car depart. I sat inside the house, silent, aware. I waited, heart-locked. As later, I got a message from the PI, images of the retreat location, attendees arriving, including Elaine, Lucas's car near the property, though he claimed he wasn't going. I frowned. I instructed, track overnight interactions. Any off-site movements. Audio, if possible. That evening, I got more. Photos of Elaine walking at night to a small guest cabin. A man's form nearby. Not Lucas, or maybe so, shadowed, ambiguous. I studied angles, timestamps. I felt dread, betrayal, vindication all swirl. The truth was boiling up. I printed the images. I organized everything, from the lodge, to cafes, to hotel stays, to this retreat. I drove up the mountain that night undercover. I parked on a trailhead road. I hiked toward the retreat's edge, careful, quiet. I watched lights flicker. I peered through windows from a distance, saw 2 figures in one cabin, doors ajar. I recorded what I could through my phone with telephoto lens. I stayed hidden, heart pounding. Then I left. I returned home. I sat at my desk in the dark, folder open, evidence laid out. I whispered, This is it. I knew the moment was near. Next morning, she came home. Her face was tired, a little drawn, as if she sensed what had shifted. I greeted her quietly, my voice steady. She flinched. I went to the folder and laid new photos before her, one by one. Her eyes widened. Tears broke. Her composure unraveled. She began to speak, but I held up my hand. Let me finish. I laid out the story: a lodge, cafe, retreat, meeting, walking to her cabin with a man. I said, I have more. I tracked, I hiked, I recorded. I know you tried to conceal. I know you lied. I know you crossed lines again. She shook, wept. I said, you have to decide now. Do you accept full transparency? Do you sever all contact with whoever this is? Do you attempt to rebuild this marriage, or accept that it ended the day trust died? She gasped, stammered, pleaded. I gave her options: a full reintegration under strict terms, a separation, exposed to friends, community, art circle. I told her I needed to hear her decision by midnight. I left the photos out. I went into the other room. I lay awake, mind racing, heart bleeding. That night, her footsteps came to the door. She opened it softly. She knelt at the bed. She whispered, I choose us. I will do whatever you ask. Her voice cracked. I said nothing. I pressed my eyes shut and let the silence swallow us both. Night draped the house in shadows. I lay awake listening to her breathing in the guest room, wondering whether by morning things would be different, repaired, broken, or somewhere in between. When dawn came, I didn't rush. I sat in the living room, folder truth closed on the table beside me, coffee black in hand, mind sharp. I anticipated her knock. She appeared at the doorway. Her eyes looked hollow, red around the edges, hair loose. She was wearing a simple sweater. She walked slowly. I stood. She said, voice trembling, I'm ready to decide. I nodded. We sat at the table, just us, in the early light. Silence hung thick. I unfolded the photos. She watched each one, tears glistening. I said, these are not the parting shreds of a secret. This is the full tapestry of what's been hidden. You owe me your full truth now, and the choice of how this ends. She nodded, took a breath. She spoke, voice low, I know I destroyed more than I understood. That escape I sought turned into pain for both of us. I never meant for it to extend into lying and double lives. She paused. I want to end it, to stay, to rebuild, or to walk away if this has become impossible. I looked at her, weighing every tremor in her voice. I said, before I decide what comes next, you need to say how you will live from now on. No shadows, no second chances until you've earned every single step. Do you accept full accountability, contact logs, messages, meetings, finances, everything open to me? Do you accept boundaries, therapy, patience? Do you completely end all contact with anyone that threatened us? And do you commit to rebuilding with honesty or walk away now knowing the damage you've caused? Her lips quivered. She gazed at the table. After long seconds, she nodded, voice firm, a yes. Then she said, I sever all contact with Lucas. I give you full access. No secrets. I'll go to every session. I'll earn this or I'll accept the consequences. I leaned back, heart pounding. I said, very well. I will watch. You will prove it day by day. If at any point you retreat into lies or concealment, I will consider this marriage ended. She nodded, tears glistening. I said nothing more. We sat together in that silence, pain, relief, grief, hope twisting. Over the following days, I observed. She kept her word. No secret trips. No strange calls. No excuses. She showed me texts, call logs, replies. She gave me permission to check. She asked me what I needed. She attended therapy daily. She reconstructed transparency. The house felt fragile but less oppressive. Sometimes, I would catch her glancing at me, shame and longing in her eyes, as though seeking forgiveness that words couldn't cover. One morning over breakfast, she asked, "Would you ever tell Michael the full story?" I hesitated. I looked at my son's face, the sorrow behind his eyes. I said, "Only if I must." She nodded. I said, "Not yet." She placed her hand over mine. I held it. At work, I felt strange weight lift. I fixed units, climbed roofs, inspected ducts. I drove the truck route, called clients. In the hum of machines and the smell of coolant, I found refuge from emotional storms. Weeks passed. The social circle quieted. Art group murmurs diminished. Friends either ignored or avoided the matter. Some sent me supportive notes. Some sent Elaine quiet condolences. But most of it settled into uneasy silence. Then came the test I feared. A mutual friend was hosting a gallery opening out of town. Elaine invited me. She said she hoped to rejoin her circle. My heart clenched. This was the kind of social crossroads that could expose everything in you. But I agreed. At the opening, people greeted us. Some offered polite smiles, some avoided eye contact, some whispered behind their hands. I walked beside her, chest tight. She leaned in, whispered, "Thank you for coming." I nodded, silent. At one point, someone said, "Elaine, your work feels new, fresh, raw." She nodded, eyes wet. I felt that tension crack again. But we kept moving. The night passed. No confrontation. Nothing public. Later, in the car, she said, "I didn't know if I could stand people looking at me." I took her hand. "You don't have to hide anymore." She rested her head on my shoulder. But that opening was not the end. One day, I got a message from Lucas's wife, a woman I had never met. She asked to meet. She had seen things. She felt betrayed. She demanded answers. I felt blood settle in my chest. The web of betrayal was not just ours. I arranged to meet her at a coffee shop halfway. She arrived, surprised to see me. We Saturday. She looked angry, disillusioned, hurt. She asked me what I knew. I told her just enough, that I have proof, that there was an affair, that boundaries were now in place. She said she never knew. She offered nothing but pain and confusion. I felt pity for her, anger for Elaine, resentment at Lucas. But mostly sorrow. I walked out of that meeting with weight heavier than before. The collateral damage was real. This wasn't just between us. But it hadn't changed my resolve. In the months that followed, I monitored our home. I watched her growth and her slips. I watched her guard, her fear. She stumbled once, a late call she forgot to show me, and I asked. She answered. She apologized. I judged her carefully. I didn't humiliate her. But I held her accountable. Then one evening, she came into my workshop in the garage. She stood in the doorway, her eyes red but determined. She said quietly, "I want to show you something." She held a small sketchbook. She flipped through pages. She had sketched our home, corners of rooms, light, the dining table, dusk, and a small portrait of me. It was rough, but honest. She said, "I want you in my art again. Not as a memory, but as part of something alive." My throat tightened. I said, "This is beautiful." I stood, came over. We held each other. I told her, "I don't know if we'll ever be what we once were. But I'm willing to walk, step by step, wherever this leads." She pressed her forehead to mine. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I breathed in her scent, the ache, the memory. I kissed her softly. From that moment, something shifted. The fragile truce became something tentative. Trust didn't return all at once, but a new foundation started: honesty, respect, caution, repaired hearts. Some nights, I woke and she was beside me. Other nights she slept in the guest room, guilt and fear still raw. I wanted closure, part of me wanted vindication. But I realized life is less about dramatic ending and more about how you reconstruct after collapse. I chose to rebuild, not as molten shards glued back, but as something new, stronger in cracks. The final point came months later. The Fine Art Festival where Elaine had won prizes before invited her again. She hesitated to submit. I encouraged. She did. At the festival, her new piece, a mixed media work called Broken Light, drew attention. People asked about her work. I stood nearby, proud and wary. Some knew pieces of the story. Some didn't. But I walked beside her. We faced whispers. We shook hands. We listened to praise. We didn't hide. After the event, we walked through the gallery. She squeezed my elbow. She said, "Thank you for staying." I nodded. I replied, "Thank you for fighting." We paused at her painting Broken Light, shards and beams of soft color. She traced a finger along it. I looked at her. I said, "Maybe this is how we heal, and not by forgetting, but by making something beautiful from broken pieces." She looked at me, eyes moist but hopeful. "Yes," she said. That night, our bed was hers again. Sleep came slow, cautious. I held her. She whispered, "I love you." I said, "Show me every day." She nodded, tears slipping. So this is where I end my story, not with perfect resolution, not with magical redemption, but with truth, accountability, complication, and a chance. Because sometimes, the strongest stories aren't those of vengeance, but those of rebuilding when trust is ashes.